All right. Greetings and welcome to another episode of the Unnamed Bracketology podcast. My name is Kerry Miller, joined as always by my good friend Graham Dorn, who is already into the brown liquor. It's 4 p.m., and I don't blame you in the slightest. This bubble has gotten absolutely insane. We're hoping that Miami, Ohio just gave us a bid thief today, although they may have just killed their own bid. Who knows? But Graham, how are we feeling aside from nauseous and exhausted?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually, I think, a good point to describe what happens with championship week. The committee just gets nauseous and exhausted at some point. We've done this mock committee for years. At some point, you're like, you know what? I'm just ready to just vote and be done with it. And I think oftentimes we wonder, why aren't the results on Saturday and Sunday getting more weight than they are? And I think a lot of it just comes down to it's not that the committee's ignoring those results. They've just talked about it for so long. They've voted so many times. They just don't really care to move anything again. It's too exhausting at some point.
I mean, I think that's, I mean, it is like they meet for 4 days and it is a lot, but I think part of the problem is that we try and cram so much of it in that we get exhausted. It's just like, all right, let's just move it along. And I think they actually do spend more time on it. I don't think they're, I don't know. But yeah, it gets exhausting after a while. Like, how many times can you talk about the same team? I mean, obviously, we've tried in our 57 episodes of doing this over the last 2 months, but uh, let's start with last night, though. Obviously, Miami, Ohio was the big story of the day, but just last night's bubble carnage. Texas losing to Ole Miss, Indiana losing to Northwestern, Boise State wasn't even really on the bubble, but so many other teams lost that it got interesting for the Broncos. Not anymore. They lost to San Jose State. It's like it's hard to even find anybody worth considering anymore, outside of Florida State is surging if you ignore their metrics from before January 20th. So, what was the maybe biggest shift that happened last night for you?
I thought VCU got a little bit more likely to make the tournament. I thought they were a team that looked like if they need the at large, they're probably going to eventually fall out. We had talked about that even like weeks ago, really. Like VCU, they don't seem like they've actually got a chance because they have to take a loss in the A10. But so many bubble teams lost over the last week of the regular season. And then yesterday, that I think they've got a legitimate shot. I also think it could potentially be St. Louis if they lose, headed down to Dayton too, right on that cut line. I don't think St. Louis is safe by any means, especially if we get a few bid stealers. So to me, that's the biggest takeaway is I think there's a good chance the A10 could get two in. And I also think New Mexico and San Diego State, those two are probably going to play each other in a Mountain West semifinal. Could that be a play-in game? And the committee's like, all right, whoever wins this game, you're our last team in. I could see something similar to that.
I mean, fingers crossed that they play each other. Nobody on the bubble can win. They'll probably both lose tonight for all we know. But yeah, I do think VCU is a good call there because VCU is how far I was willing to drop Miami, Ohio, because I think I have VCU right behind the Red Hawks now. In theory, they would play each other at 42 and 43 overall. And then I have SMU and Auburn as my last two teams in. I dropped Texas out when Miami, Ohio lost today, which shrunk the field, at least in theory. But yeah, VCU feels like where Miami, Ohio would be if they had played anybody. They don't have the great wins, so I feel like having lost 7 times, mostly to quality opponents, but not having any bad losses, having solid metrics. It does feel like they've gained some ground just by standing still. I remember when they lost to St. Louis. I mean, when was that? Like February 25th or something like that. We were like, that's probably the end of the line for the Rams. They needed this one, but they won at Dayton to end the regular season. We'll see what they do in the A10 tournament. I know they would, I think, no matter who they play tomorrow, and pretty much no matter who they play on Saturday, it's going to be quad three games for them. So they need to avoid stubbing their toe because unfortunately, any loss that VCU would pick up in the next 2 days is worse than Texas losing to Ole Miss on a neutral or Indiana losing to Northwestern. The benefit is it's happening after the committee has theoretically filled out their field. We think that that will end tonight, and then the rest of the way it's just about seeding and scrubbing, but we'll see. I don't know about you. Part of me is starting to worry that they're going to throw something at us just to shut us the hell up about that, like they did with the top 16 reveal a couple of years ago. I think some result on Friday is going to hold way more weight than it would have in years past. I don't know what result that's going to be, but what do you think about that sort of conspiracy theory?
I've had the exact same thought. What the committee has tended to do over the years is when we, as bracketologists, start complaining loud enough about something and it starts to pick up mainstream media attention, they tend to overcorrect for 1 year and then they ignore it forever again. But they tend to have that 1 year where they just try to make a point that it does matter. And I tend to think you might be right. I'm also very tempted to potentially move Iowa State up from a 3 seed to a 2 seed based on what they've done
Hmm.
after initially being seeded as a 3 seed. I think there could be an emphasis there. Look what the Cyclones did in the Big 12 tournament in their first 2 games, looking very impressive. We moved them up. They started the week as a 3, but we moved them up to a 2. I think they're a prime candidate for that.
Yeah, they're the reverse of West Virginia last year, right? Where the committee is still watching these games before doing their final evaluations. I think I saw with Keith Gill's interview with Andy Katz that he said like yesterday they were going to probably seed the first two lines, so they were already kind of talking about Iowa State. Now it's like holy shit, look what the Cyclones did today, and that could bump them up. I mean, they're going to get some help eventually because who we have right now at 7 and 8 overall, both Big Ten teams, Michigan State and Illinois. They can't both win the Big Ten tournament. So if Iowa State keeps winning, I think they could jump up to the from the top three onto that back end of the two line. Other results from today: Virginia beats NC State. It was a close game. I think NC State is still in. I wouldn't call them a lock though. We'll see how many other bid thieves there end up being. We're about out of bubble teams that can pass them though. What else we got? Kentucky beat Missouri. Are you worried about Missouri at all?
I think Missouri is going to be in the tournament. I could definitely see them in Dayton. I kind of feel like Missouri is one of those teams where they're not really in any major worry unless the bubble starts to get a little bit smaller due to bid thieves. And if that happens, then I think they're potentially in danger of missing. But their top end wins are so good that in a
Yeah.
bubble like this, I just have a hard time seeing that profile left out.
Yeah, I was surprised that I guess he scrubbed it overnight. That Lunardi originally had Missouri as his fourth to last in and still had Texas fifth to last in. Now those have switched. Now he has Texas, I think, second to last in. I've dropped Texas out. But yeah, I think Missouri's been tough. I mean, we've talked about Missouri all season as a tough one to seed just because their predictive metrics are so bad. Because when they do lose, they really lose sometimes. And you've brought it up with Jaden Stone and what did you say, pounded in the stone or whatever. Yeah, I think Missouri should be fine. I was surprised to see they were still on the bubble really for some teams or for some people. St. John's beat Providence. Ohio State beat Iowa. Did I say that right? Ohio State, not Iowa State. Beat Iowa. So I think I'm always reluctant to call anybody a lock, like newly lock anybody in at this point, but Buckeyes are a lock now to me, and I think Iowa is safely in, but I could see them slip into like a 10 seed, just pending other things. And we talked about the Hawkeyes a bit yesterday as well. But did you make any moves from that game?
I think Ohio State is going to be the two. They're going to probably be the one that ends up maybe 1 seed higher than Iowa, and I think they both had such similar profiles. Whoever won this game is probably just going to end up a little bit higher than the other. So expect we'll see Ohio State in the 8-9 game, and I think Iowa may potentially be looking at a 10 seed based on what happens around them.
Yeah, I think I have Ohio State at 33 and Iowa at 35. I opened the day with Iowa at 35 and Ohio State at 36. So I basically just moved them to the top of the 9 line. Didn't actually change anything with my bracket for that one. Um, any other developments today to talk about?
Well, I
I don't think
think
so.
Just to hit on Miami, Ohio again,
Sure.
I feel like they've done so much that you can't really leave them out and still talk about Wob as being an important factor in the process. So I think they're going to get in, but I also feel very confident they're going to go to Dayton. Like, if for a team that hasn't really beaten anybody all year, no better place to send them than Dayton. So I feel like the Red Hawks are going to be Dayton bound.
Are they going to play Auburn in the opening round?
Let me see what happens with this Auburn Tennessee game first. They're up 11. I think there's a real possibility Auburn could potentially avoid Dayton. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised to see Missouri fall down to Dayton and the committee sends a message. You want to get into the tournament and not just get in the tournament, get like a 10 seed, go out and schedule tough. That's what Auburn did. So I'm not convinced that Auburn's in quite as much danger as people think if they beat Tennessee.
Yeah. No, if they beat Tennessee, I agree. I think they're clear of Dayton. I think at that point they are your prototypical, what do we do with them? We make them a 9 seed type of team. I could absolutely see 16 loss Auburn going up against like 4 loss St. Louis in an 8-9 type of game, something stupid. But yeah, if they win, they're good. But if Auburn loses this game, I know they're up by 11 right now. Would you? I mean, you wouldn't immediately drop them for a loss to Tennessee, but where do you think they land ultimately? Assuming no more bid thieves, which is a stupid assumption at this point, but if nothing else crazy happens, where would you have Auburn?
I think Auburn would be in Dayton in that scenario, but I do think there's going to be more bid thieves. So I tend to think Auburn probably ends up your first team out in that scenario because I am expecting more bid thieves. I think it would send a great message for the committee to be like, they were right there, they were voted in. All that had to happen is no bid thief. And when the bid thief eventually came, Auburn missed out on the bid, not because we didn't want them in. We did want them in. The bid thief took their bid. Don't blame us.
All right, last thought, Texas Tech. They got drilled the opposite end of that Iowa State impressive result was I mean, Texas Tech came out, they were up like 19-4, and then they just got boat raced from there, which is kind of what happened in the BYU game as well. I think it's just a limited front court. They're able to come out hot, and then they just get worn down really quickly. Where are the Red Raiders going to end up? Because they were 13 in the reveal. That was after the loss to Arizona State. Since then, home wins over Kansas State and Cincinnati, and then that what we thought was a big statement road win over Iowa State. But since then, consecutive losses to TCU, BYU, and now Iowa State. I scrubbed them down behind St. John's to 19 overall. I don't think they're any longer in the mix for a 4 seed. What do you think?
I don't know that I'll drop them that far, but I tend to think they have a bit of an Arkansas problem. They lost to Arkansas on a neutral court. Arkansas entered the week, to me, the 17th team overall. I think when the committee looks at those two in comparison, they're going to be like, yeah, okay, Texas Tech, you have the top wins, but you also have the injury concern. Arkansas beat you head to head. You drop to the 5 line. Then where they end up on the 5 line, I think is probably going to come down to the rest of the results this week.
All right. Enjoy your drink, man. I'm gonna have one myself here pretty soon so we can get through the end of the night. But I gotta take my kiddo to her dance class and then come back and fire up all these screens again. But until next time, God help us. I hope a bubble team wins a few games here, but enjoy the hoops.